The rain hammered against the hospital window as I sat in the sterile waiting room, my fingers trembling around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. 3 years. 3 years of this toxic dance between Mason and me, and it was finally coming to an end. I'd been paying him to stay with me since freshman year of college. Mason Richards, the straight guy from my economics class who'd caught my eye with his sharp jawline and those impossibly green eyes. He'd been struggling financially, working 2 jobs to support his sick mother, and I'd seen an opportunity. I'd made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Be my boyfriend, and I'd take care of everything. The arrangement was simple on paper. I'd pay his tuition, his mother's medical bills, his rent. In return, he'd play the part of my devoted partner. But nothing about our relationship was simple. Mason despised me for it, and I knew it. Every kiss felt like a transaction, every touch like a business deal. He'd look at me with those green eyes full of resentment, and I'd pretend it didn't tear me apart inside. But I couldn't stop. I was addicted to the control, to having him near me, even if it meant buying his affection. I told myself it was love, but deep down, I knew it was something darker. I was manipulating him, trapping him in a cage made of money and desperation. The worst part was that Mason was good at pretending. Too good. He'd smile at me in public, hold my hand, play the perfect boyfriend. But behind closed doors, the mask would slip. He'd flinch when I touched him, avoid my eyes when we talked. The only time he seemed truly alive was when he was angry, when he'd lash out at me with words that cut deeper than any blade. "You think you own me, don't you?" he'd said just last week, his voice shaking with rage. "You think because you pay for everything, I belong to you." I'd wanted to deny it, to tell him that wasn't true. But the words had died in my throat because he was right. I did think I owned him. I'd bought his loyalty, his body, his time. But I'd never been able to buy his heart. The memory of that fight still haunted me as I sat in the hospital, waiting for news about my mother's condition. She'd had another episode, and the doctors weren't sure if she'd make it through the night. Mason had driven me here, had sat with me for hours without complaint. But I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged under the weight of our twisted relationship. "Alex," he said softly, his voice cutting through my thoughts, "the doctor wants to speak with you." I looked up to see him standing in the doorway, his dark hair disheveled, his clothes rumpled from hours of sitting in uncomfortable chairs. Even exhausted and stressed, he was beautiful. It made my chest ache with want and guilt in equal measure. The doctor delivered the news with practiced compassion. My mother was stable, but she'd need extensive treatment. More bills, more expenses, more reasons for Mason to stay trapped in our arrangement. I saw the resignation in his eyes as the doctor explained the costs, saw the way his shoulders tensed as he calculated how much longer he'd have to endure this. We drove home in silence, the city lights blurring past the windows of my expensive car. Another symbol of the wealth that had allowed me to buy Mason's presence in my life. I'd grown up privileged, the son of successful parents who'd given me everything except the ability to form genuine connections. Money had always been my solution to every problem, including loneliness. "I can't do this anymore," Mason said suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Your mother needs the treatment. You know I'll take care of it." "That's not what I mean." He turned to look at me, and I could see the pain in his eyes even in the dim light of the dashboard. "I can't keep pretending to love you, Alex. It's killing me." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. "The arrangement works for both of us. You get what you need, and I get..." "What? You get what, exactly?" His voice was rising now, 3 years of suppressed anger finally breaking free. "A boyfriend who flinches every time you touch him? Someone who has to get drunk just to kiss you without feeling sick?" I pulled over to the side of the road, my hands shaking as I put the car in park. Don't what? Don't tell the truth." Mason laughed bitterly. "You've turned me into a prostitute, Alex. A high-class one, maybe, but that's what I am. And the worst part is, I've let you do it because I was too scared to watch my mother die." The pain in his voice was unbearable. I'd always known he hated our arrangement, but hearing it laid out so starkly made me realize the full extent of what I'd done to him. I'd taken a straight man and twisted him into something he never wanted to be, all for my own selfish desires. I never meant for it to be like this, I said, my voice hollow. But it is like this. He opened the car door, letting the cool night air rush in. I'm done, Alex. Find someone else to buy. He got out of the car and started walking, his figure quickly disappearing into the darkness. I sat there for a long moment, my heart pounding in my chest, before I put the car back in drive and followed him slowly. Get in, I called out the window. I'll take you home. I can walk. Mason, please, just get in the car. He stopped walking but didn't turn around. Why? So you can offer me more money? So you can find another way to trap me? Because I love you, I said, the words escaping before I could stop them. He did turn around then, and I could see the tears on his cheeks even from a distance. No, you don't. You love owning me. There's a difference. He was right, and we both knew it. What I felt for Mason was possessive, obsessive, destructive. It wasn't love, it was control. And it was destroying both of us. I drove home alone that night, my expensive apartment feeling more like a prison than ever. Mason didn't come back. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. I'd finally pushed him too far, and he'd found the strength to walk away. But even without him, I couldn't let go. I found out where he was staying, sent him money anyway. I knew he needed it for his mother's treatment, and despite everything, I couldn't bear the thought of her suffering because of our broken relationship. The checks went uncashed. 3 months later, I was driving home from another pointless therapy session when it happened. I'd been trying to work through my issues, to understand why I'd been so desperate to control Mason, to own him. The therapist had been helpful, but the sessions mostly just made me realize how deeply I damaged both of us. I was thinking about Mason when the truck ran the red light. I saw it coming, had maybe half a second to process what was happening before it slammed into the driver's side of my car. The impact was tremendous, the sound of crushing metal and shattering glass filling my ears as the world spun around me. Then everything went quiet. I found myself floating somehow, looking down at the wreckage of my car. My body was trapped inside, blood everywhere, clearly beyond saving. Emergency responders were already on the scene, working frantically to extract me from the twisted metal. But I knew it was too late. That's when I saw him. Mason came running from somewhere, his face pale with terror. He must have heard about the accident, must have rushed to the scene. He pushed past the emergency workers, ignoring their shouts for him to stay back, and somehow managed to get close enough to reach into the wreckage. No, 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 he was saying, his voice breaking. Alex, please, don't do this. He was crying. Mason, who had spent 3 years hating me, who had walked away from our toxic relationship, was crying over my broken body. His hands were shaking as he tried to touch me, to hold me, blood staining his clothes as he pulled me closer. I'm sorry, he whispered, his voice so soft I almost couldn't hear it. I'm so sorry I left you. I'm sorry for everything. I wanted to tell him it wasn't his fault, that he'd been right to leave, that I was the one who should be sorry. But I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't do anything but watch as the life drained out of my body, and Mason held me like I was something precious instead of the monster who'd tormented him for 3 years. The last thing I saw before the darkness took me was Mason's face, streaked with tears and blood, his green eyes full of a pain that matched my own. Chapter 2, Reborn and Reformed. I woke up to the sound of my roommate's alarm clock, the same annoying beeping that had driven me crazy freshman year. But that was impossible. I'd graduated 3 years ago, had been living in my own apartment when the accident happened. I sat up in bed, my heart racing, and looked around the room. There was my old desk, my old computer, my old posters on the wall. Everything was exactly as I remembered it from when I was 18. My hands shook as I reached for my phone, checking the date. September 15th, 2019. 6 years before the accident. 6 years before I die in that twisted wreckage while Mason held my broken body and cried. I was back. Somehow, impossibly, I was back. My roommate, Jake, was already up and getting dressed for his morning classes. He looked exactly the same as I remembered. Young, optimistic, completely unaware of the darkness that life could hold. "You okay, man?" he asked, noticing my expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." In a way, I had. The ghost of my future self. The man who'd become so twisted by obsession that he'd destroyed the person he claimed to love. "I'm fine," I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Just a weird dream." Jake shrugged and continued getting ready. I sat on my bed, trying to process what had happened. Was this real? Had I actually been given a second chance? Or was this just some kind of elaborate death dream? I pinched myself hard. The pain felt real. The sounds and smells of the dormitory felt real. The calendar on my desk, the textbooks on my shelf, the clothes in my closet. Everything was exactly as it had been when I was 18. If this was real, if I'd somehow been sent back in time, then I had a choice to make. I could repeat the same mistakes, could seek out Mason and begin that toxic cycle all over again. Or I could change things. I could leave him alone, let him live the life he was supposed to live. The choice was easy. I spent the next few weeks focusing on my studies, making friends, living the normal college life I'd never allowed myself before. I avoided the economics building where I'd first seen Mason, took different routes across campus, even changed my major to something that would keep me far away from him. It was harder than I'd expected. Every day, I found myself thinking about him, wondering where he was, what he was doing. The obsession was still there, buried deep in my chest like a cancer. But I fought it. I reminded myself of the pain in his voice when he told me he couldn't pretend to love me anymore, of the tears on his face as he'd held my dying body. I wouldn't put him through that again. I wouldn't put either of us through that again. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. I was in my dorm room, studying for a midterm, when there was a knock at the door. Jake was at his girlfriend's place, so I was alone. I opened the door expecting to see one of my floor mates. Maybe someone looking to borrow notes or just wanting to hang out. Instead, I found myself face to face with Mason. He looked exactly as I remembered him at 18, tall, lean, with that sharp jawline and those impossibly green eyes. His dark hair was slightly longer than it would be later, his face softer, more open. He was wearing a simple t-shirt and jeans, but even in casual clothes, he was breathtakingly beautiful. "Alex," he said, and his voice was different too. Not the bitter, resentful tone I remembered, but something warmer, more genuine.
"I'm Mason."
"I think we need to talk." My heart stopped. I don't think we've met." He smiled, and it was a real smile, not the forced ones I'd become accustomed to. "We have. Just not in this timeline." The words hit me like a physical blow. He knew. Somehow, Mason knew about our previous life, about the accident, about everything. "You remember," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Everything." He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, the same scent that had haunted my dreams for years. The arrangement, the fights, the way it ended. All of it. I stumbled backward, my mind racing. "That's impossible. How can you?" "I don't know how," he said, following me into the room. "I just know that I died too, Alex. After the accident, after I held you, I couldn't live with what we'd become. I tried to end it and I succeeded. But then I woke up here, just like you. The room felt too small, too hot. Couldn't breathe. You died because of me." "No." His voice was firm, certain. "I died because I was too afraid to live. Because I spent 3 years hating myself for wanting you, for needing you, for caring about you despite everything." "You hated me?" I said, backing up until I hit the wall. "You said I was killing you." "I hated what we'd become," he corrected. "I hated the arrangement, the pretense, the way we were both trapped in something that was destroying us. But I never hated you, Alex. Not really." I shook my head, unable to process what he was saying. "This isn't real. This can't be real." Mason reached out and touched my face, his fingers gentle against my cheek. "It's real. We're real. And this time I want to do it right." "Do what right?" "Love you," he said simply. "Without the money, without the arrangement, without all the poison that corrupted us before." I want to love you the way I should have from the beginning. I jerked away from his touch, panic rising in my chest. No, no, I won't do that to you again. I won't trap you, won't force you into something you don't want. You're not forcing me, he said, his voice patient. I'm here because I want to be here, because I choose to be here. You're straight, I said desperately. You were straight before and you'll be straight now. Find a girl, Mason. Find someone who can love you without destroying you. He laughed, but it wasn't bitter or mocking. It was warm, genuine. I've been thinking about that for the past few weeks, trying to figure out what I really am, what I really want. And you know what I realized? I was never straight, Alex. I was just scared. Scared of what? Of being different, of disappointing my family, of not being the man I thought I was supposed to be. He sat down on my bed, looking suddenly tired. But mostly, I was scared of admitting that I wanted you from the very beginning. Even before the money, even before the arrangement. I saw you in that economics class, and I felt something I'd never felt before. I stared at him, my mind reeling. You wanted me? I wanted you so much it terrified me, he said. But I didn't know how to handle it, how to be with you without feeling like I was betraying myself. So when you offered me money, I took it. Not just because I needed it, but because it gave me an excuse to be with you without having to confront what I was really feeling. The money made it easier, I said, understanding dawning. For both of us, he agreed. You could tell yourself you were buying me, and I could tell myself I was just doing what I had to do. But the truth was, we both wanted something we were too afraid to ask for honestly. I slumped against the wall, feeling exhausted. So what now? What do you want from me? I want to try again, he said. No money, no arrangements, no lies. Just us, figuring out what we could be together. And if it doesn't work? If we just end up hurting each other again? Mason stood up and walked over to me, his eyes serious. Then at least we'll know we tried. At least we'll know we were brave enough to choose love over fear. I looked at him, this beautiful, impossible man who'd somehow been given a second chance just like me. Part of me wanted to say yes, to throw myself into his arms and pretend that everything could be different this time. But the other part, the part that remembered the pain and the toxicity and the way we destroyed each other, was screaming at me to run. I need time, I said finally. I need to think about this. Mason nodded, understanding. Take all the time you need. But Alex, don't run from this. Don't run from me. We both deserve better than that. He left then, closing the door softly behind him. I stood alone in my room, my heart pounding, my mind racing with possibilities and fears in equal measure. Mason was right about one thing: we both deserved better. But the question was, were we capable of giving it to each other? Chapter 3. The Escape. Couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mason's face, heard his voice saying he wanted to love me the right way this time. It was everything I'd ever dreamed of hearing from him, and it terrified me. By morning, I'd made my decision. Couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk hurting him again. Couldn't risk falling back into the same destructive patterns that had consumed us both. The only way to protect Mason was to stay away from him, no matter how much it hurt. I started looking for an apartment off campus that same day. You're moving out? Jake asked, watching me pack my things with confusion. But we just got here. The semester's barely started. I need my own space, I said, not meeting his eyes. Dorm life isn't for me. It was a lie, of course. I'd loved dorm life the first time around, had thrived on the chaos and camaraderie of living with other students. But now I needed distance, needed walls between me and the temptation that Mason represented. I found a small apartment 20 minutes from campus, nothing fancy but clean and quiet. It was perfect for someone who wanted to disappear, to live a life of careful isolation. I threw myself into my studies, avoided social events, kept my head down and my heart locked away. For a while, it worked. I didn't see Mason around campus, didn't run into him at parties or in the library. I started to think maybe he'd given up, had found someone else to focus his attention on. The thought should have been a relief, but instead, it felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Then, 3 weeks after I'd moved out, I decided to go to Murphy's, a little bar just off campus where students went to drink cheap beer and pretend they were adults. I needed to get out of my apartment, needed to be around people even if I wasn't going to connect with them. The bar was crowded, filled with the usual mix of college kids and townies. I found a corner booth and ordered a beer, content to sit alone and watch the crowd. That's when I saw him. Mason was behind the bar, pulling pints and mixing drinks with practiced efficiency. He looked older somehow, more confident, like he'd found his place in the world. He was laughing at something one of the customers had said, and the sound sent a familiar ache through my chest. I should have left, should have finished my beer and walked out before he saw me. But I couldn't move, couldn't tear my eyes away from him. He was magnetic, drawing me in just like he had all those years ago. Alex! I looked up to find Jamie standing beside my table, a tray of empty glasses in his hands. Jamie was a bartender too, a sophomore with sandy hair and an easy smile. We'd met a few times at parties, had always gotten along well. "Hey, Jamie," I said, grateful for the distraction. "I didn't know you worked here. Just started last week," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. "The pay's decent and the tips aren't bad. Plus, I get to meet interesting people." He was flirting, I realized. The smile, the way he was leaning forward, the subtle emphasis on interesting people. It was all classic flirtation. Under normal circumstances, I might have been interested. Jamie was cute, funny, and most importantly, he wasn't Mason. "You want to get out of here?" I asked impulsively. "Maybe grab some coffee, talk somewhere quieter?" Jamie's smile widened. "I'd like that. Let me just finish my shift." I waited for him, nursing my beer and carefully avoiding looking at Mason. But I could feel his eyes on me, could sense his presence like a physical weight. When Jamie finally finished work, I practically bolted from the bar, eager to escape the suffocating atmosphere. We went to an all-night diner, one of those places that served greasy food and bitter coffee to insomniacs and night shift workers. Jamie was easy to talk to, full of stories about his classes and his part-time jobs. He made me laugh, something I hadn't done in weeks. "So what's your story?" he asked eventually, leaning back in his booth. "Rich kid slumming it with the working class?" "Something like that," I said, though his words stung more than they should have. "I'm just trying to figure out who I am, I guess." "Aren't we all?" Jamie said philosophically. "College is supposed to be about finding yourself, right? Though I think most of us are too busy partying to do much self-discovery." I looked at him across the table, this sweet, uncomplicated boy who had no idea about the darkness in my past. He was exactly the kind of person I should be with, young, optimistic, uncomplicated. No history, no baggage, no potential for mutual destruction. "Jamie," I said carefully, "would you be interested in spending some time together? I mean, more than just friends." He raised an eyebrow. "Are you asking me out?" "I'm asking if you'd be interested in an arrangement," I said, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "I have money, you probably need money. We could help each other out." His expression shifted, becoming more serious. "What kind of arrangement?" "Companionship," I said, hating myself with every word. "Nothing you're not comfortable with. Just being together. I'll take care of your expenses. Make sure you don't have to worry about money." Jamie was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. "You're serious? Dead serious? Can I ask why? I mean, you're good-looking, you're smart, you seem nice enough. Why do you need to pay for company?" "Because I'm broken," I thought. "Because I don't know how to have a normal relationship. Because I'm terrified of what I might do if I let myself care about someone without having control over them. Because it's easier," I said aloud. "No complications. No expectations. No one getting hurt." Jamie nodded slowly. "And if I say yes, what would you expect from me?" "Just be yourself," I said. "Hang out with me, let me take you to dinner, maybe come to some parties. Nothing more than you're comfortable with." "And you'd pay for everything? My rent, my books, my food. Whatever you need." He was quiet again, and I could see him weighing his options. Jamie was a scholarship student I knew, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. The offer I was making would change his life, would free him from the constant worry about money that plagued so many college students. "Okay," he said finally, "but I have conditions." "Name them." "First, I want to know what this is really about. And don't give me some line about it being easier. There's something else going on here." I considered lying, but something in his expression told me he'd see right through it. "There's someone else," I said. "Someone I can't be with. This is a distraction." "Someone you love?" "Someone I can't afford to love." Jamie nodded, accepting the non-answer. "Second condition. If I want out, I walk away. No questions, no guilt trips, no trying to change my mind." "Agreed." "Third, we're honest with each other. About what we want, what we're feeling, what we're not feeling. No games, no pretense." "That's fair." "And fourth," he leaned forward, his expression serious, "I want to help you get over whoever this other person is. I want to be more than just a distraction. I want to be someone you could actually care about." His words hit me like a punch to the gut. Sweet, innocent Jamie, thinking he could heal whatever was broken in me. He had no idea what he was signing up for. "Jamie, I don't think. I know what I'm getting into," he said firmly. "And I think I can handle it. The question is, can you?" I looked at him across the table. This boy who was offering me exactly what I thought I wanted. Uncomplicated companionship without the messy emotions that had destroyed Mason and me. It should have been perfect. So why did I feel like I was making the same mistake all over again? Chapter 4. Playing house. The arrangement with Jamie started simply enough. I picked up his rent, bought him textbooks, took him to dinner at restaurants he'd never been able to afford. He was grateful, sweet, and refreshingly uncomplicated. When he smiled at me, it was genuine, not the forced expressions Mason had given me during our toxic years together. But even as I tried to convince myself that this was different, that this was better, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was repeating the same patterns. The only difference was that Jamie seemed happy about it. We fell into a routine quickly. Jamie would come over to my apartment after his classes, we'd order takeout or I'd cook something simple, and we'd spend the evening watching movies or talking. He was easy to be around, filling the silence with chatter about his day, his dreams, his plans for the future. "I want to be a teacher," he told me one evening, curled up on my couch with his head on my shoulder. "Elementary school, maybe. I love kids." "That's nice," I said, though I wasn't really listening. I was thinking about Mason, wondering what he was doing, whether he was still working at Murphy's. "What about you?" Jamie asked. "What do you want to do after graduation?" I realized I'd never really thought about it. In my previous life, I'd coasted through college on my parents' money, had never needed to worry about a career. After graduation, I'd lived off my trust fund and spent my time pursuing Mason. "I don't know," I admitted. "I've never really had to think about it." Jamie lifted his head to look at me. "That must be nice, not having to worry about money." There was no bitterness in his voice, just curiosity. He wasn't like Mason, who'd grown to resent my wealth even as he'd depended on it. Jamie accepted my financial support as naturally as he accepted everything else about our arrangement. "Sometimes I think it would be easier if I did have to worry about it," I said. "At least then I'd have a purpose, a reason to get up in the morning." "You could always give it away," Jamie suggested. "Donate it to charity, start a foundation, help people who need it." "Maybe," I said, though the idea felt foreign to me. Money had always been a tool for me, a way to get what I wanted. The idea of giving it away without expecting anything in return was almost incomprehensible. We'd been together for about a month when Jamie first brought up the physical side of our relationship. We were lying in bed, not doing anything beyond cuddling, when he turned to me with a serious expression. "Alex, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Are you attracted to me?" The question caught me off guard. "Of course I am. Why would you ask that?" "Because we've been together for weeks and you've never tried to, you know. I mean, I'm not complaining, but I'm curious. Most guys would have made a move by now." I shifted uncomfortably. The truth was I was attracted to Jamie. He was cute, sweet, and affectionate. But every time I looked at him, I saw Mason. Every time he touched me, I remembered Mason's hands. Every time he smiled at me, I thought about Mason's rare, genuine smiles and how much more they had meant to me. "I don't want to pressure you," I said finally. "I know this arrangement is unconventional. I don't want you to feel like you have to do anything you're not comfortable with." Jamie propped himself up on his elbow, looking down at me with those earnest eyes. "What if I want to? What if I'm comfortable with it?" "Are you?" "I think so," he said softly. "I mean, I like you, Alex. This isn't just about the money for me anymore. I care about you." The words should have made me happy. Jamie cared about me, wanted to be with me, was offering me everything I thought I wanted. But instead, they made me feel sick. Because I knew I was using him, just like I'd used Mason. The only difference was that Jamie didn't seem to mind. "Jamie," I said carefully, "I need you to understand something. I'm not available. Emotionally, I care about you. But there's a part of me that's always going to belong to someone else. The someone you can't be with," he said, understanding immediately. "Yes. Do you love him?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Did I love Mason? Or was what I felt for him just obsession, possession, the need to control and own? I'd been asking myself that question for weeks, and I still didn't have an answer. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I think I did. I think I still do. But I'm not sure I know what love is supposed to feel like." Jamie was quiet for a moment, processing my words. "Will you tell me about him?" "I don't think that's a good idea." "Please," he said softly. "I want to understand. I want to know what I'm competing with." So I told him. Not everything, of course. I couldn't explain about the previous life, about the accident, about the way Mason had held my broken body and cried. But I told him about the arrangement, about the way I'd paid Mason to be with me, about how it had destroyed us both. Jamie listened without judgment, his expression growing more serious as I spoke. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. "You think you're doing the same thing to me?" he said finally. "Aren't I?" "No," he said firmly. "What you had with Mason was toxic because you were both fighting it. You were trying to control him and he was trying to resist being controlled. But I'm here because I want to be here. I'm not fighting you, Alex. I'm not trying to resist." "Maybe you should be," I said. "Maybe you should run while you still can." Jamie smiled, the same sweet, uncomplicated smile that had drawn me to him in the first place. "Maybe, but I don't want to run. I want to stay and see what happens." He kissed me then, soft and gentle and full of affection. I kissed him back, trying to lose myself in the moment, trying to forget about green eyes and dark hair and the ghost of a love that had destroyed us both. But even as Jamie's hands roamed my body, even as he whispered sweet things in my ear, I couldn't stop thinking about Mason. Couldn't stop wondering if he was thinking about me too, if he was regretting his decision to give me a second chance. The next morning, Jamie was gone when I woke up. He'd left a note saying he had early classes, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he'd left because he'd sensed my distraction the night before. He was perceptive like that, always picking up on things I didn't say. I spent the day in a funk, unable to concentrate on my studies or anything else. I kept thinking about Jamie's words, about the way he'd said he wasn't fighting me. Was that really the difference between him and Mason? Or was I just telling myself that to justify what I was doing? That evening, I was surprised to find Mason waiting outside my apartment building. He was leaning against the wall, hands in his pockets, looking like he had all the time in the world. "Hello, Alex," he said when he saw me approaching. "Mason." My heart started racing just from seeing him. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to see how you were doing," he said. "I heard you've been spending time with Jamie. How did you—" I stopped, realizing it didn't matter. News traveled fast in a small college town, especially when it involved someone like me who usually kept to himself. "Are you happy?" Mason asked, and there was something in his voice that made me look at him more carefully. "I'm fine," I said, though we both knew it was a lie. "That's not what I asked." He stepped closer, and I could smell his cologne, could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes. "Are you happy, Alex?" Why does it matter to you? Because I love you, he said simply. Because even if you won't let me be with you, I still want you to be happy. The words hit me like a physical blow. Mason loved me, not the twisted, possessive feeling I'd called love, but something pure and selfless. He wanted me to be happy, even if it meant being with someone else. Mason, I said, my voice breaking. I know you're trying to protect me, he said. I know you think staying away from me is the right thing to do. But Alex, you're not protecting me. You're punishing both of us for something that happened in another life. I can't risk it, I said desperately. I can't risk turning into that person again. You won't, he said firmly. Because I won't let you. Because this time, I'm going to fight for us instead of fighting against us. He reached out and touched my face, his thumb brushing away a tear I didn't realize I'd shed. I'm not giving up on us, Alex. I'm going to keep showing up, keep proving to you that we can be different this time. And when you're ready to stop running, I'll be here. He kissed my forehead, gentle and sweet, and then he was gone, leaving me standing alone on the sidewalk with my heart racing and my mind spinning. I went upstairs to my apartment, my hands shaking as I unlocked the door. Jamie was there, sitting on my couch with a pizza box and a six-pack of beer. Surprise, he said, but his smile faltered when he saw my expression. Alex, what's wrong? Nothing, I said automatically. I ran into someone I used to know. Him, Jamie said, understanding immediately. The someone you can't be with. I nodded, not trusting my voice. Jamie was quiet for a moment. Then he stood up and walked over to me. What did he want? To talk, I said. To give us another chance. And what did you tell him? I told him I couldn't risk it. Jamie studied my face for a long moment. But you want to, don't you? You want to be with him. Jamie, It's okay, he said softly. I knew this was a possibility when I agreed to this arrangement. I knew I might just be a placeholder. You're not a placeholder, I said, though we both knew it was a lie. It's okay, he repeated. I care about you, Alex, but I'm not in love with you. And you're not in love with me. We both know that. He was right, and the truth of it made my chest ache.
I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry, he said. Be brave. If you love him, if you really love him, then fight for him. Don't let fear keep you from being happy. What if I hurt him again? What if you don't? Jamie countered. What if this time is different? What if you've both learned enough to make it work? I looked at this sweet, perceptive boy who'd been nothing but kind to me, who was willing to step aside for my happiness even though it meant losing the security I'd provided him. What about you? I asked. What about our arrangement? I'll be fine, he said with a smile. I was fine before you, and I'll be fine after you. Besides, I think I've learned something from this too. What's that? That I deserve someone who chooses me first, he said. Someone who doesn't need to pay for my company because they want it freely given. His words hit me like a slap, but they were true. Jamie did deserve better than what I'd been giving him. He deserved someone who could love him without reservations, without the ghost of another relationship haunting every moment. I'm sorry, I said again. Stop apologizing, he said firmly, and go find him. Go find Mason and tell him you're ready to stop running. What if it's too late? Then at least you'll know you tried, Jamie said. And that's better than spending the rest of your life wondering what if. He was right. I knew he was right. But the thought of facing Mason, of admitting that I'd been wrong, that I'd been a coward, terrified me more than anything I'd ever done. But maybe it was time to be brave. Chapter 5, The Revelation. I found Mason at Murphy's the next evening, working behind the bar with the same easy efficiency I'd observed before. The place was busy, filled with the usual crowd of college students and locals, but my eyes were only for him. He moved with a grace that was almost hypnotic, pouring drinks and making change while carrying on conversations with customers. I sat at the end of the bar, nursing a beer and waiting for him to notice me. When he finally did, his face lit up with a smile that made my chest tight. Alex, he said, coming over to where I sat. I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure I would either, I admitted. He studied my face for a moment, then nodded toward the back of the bar. I take my break in 20 minutes. Wait for me. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The 20 minutes felt like hours. I watched Mason work, watched him laugh with customers and colleagues, watched him be the person he'd never been able to be with me in our previous life. He looked happy, content, like he'd found his place in the world. When his break finally came, he led me outside to a small alley behind the bar. It was quieter here, away from the noise and chaos of the crowd. You ended things with Jamie, he said, and it wasn't a question. How did you? I saw him earlier. He looked relieved, actually, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. I felt a pang of guilt. I didn't mean to hurt him. You didn't, Mason said firmly. If anything, you probably saved him from something worse. Jamie's a good kid, but he deserves better than being someone's consolation prize. Is that what he was? Wasn't he? Mason asked gently. Alex, I know you were trying to replace me. I know you were trying to create something safe and controllable, something that wouldn't threaten you the way I do. You don't threaten me, I said, but we both knew it was a lie. I terrify you, he corrected, because you can't control me, because what we have is bigger than both of us, and it scares you. He was right. Mason had always been able to see through me, to cut through my defenses and expose the truth I tried so hard to hide. It was one of the things that had drawn me to him in the first place, and one of the things that had made our relationship so destructive. I'm scared of hurting you again, I admitted. I know, he said, but Alex, you need to understand something. I'm not the same person I was before. I'm not the scared, confused kid who let you pay for his company because he was too afraid to admit what he really wanted. What do you really want? You, he said simply. I want you, Alex. Not your money, not your gifts, not your security. Just you. And if I disappoint you, if I fall back into the same patterns, then we'll work through it, he said. Together. That's what couples do, isn't it? They work through their problems instead of running away from them. Couples, I repeated, testing the word. Is that what we are? I'd like us to be, Mason said. If you're willing to try. I looked at him, this beautiful, impossible man who'd somehow been given a second chance just like me. He was offering me everything I'd ever wanted, everything I'd paid for and manipulated and schemed to get. And he was offering it freely without conditions or expectations. I love you, I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I've loved you since the moment I saw you in that economics class, and I've never stopped. Even when I was with Jamie, even when I was trying to forget you, I couldn't stop loving you. Mason's eyes filled with tears. I love you too, he said. I've loved you through everything. The good times and the bad, the arrangements and the fights, even death itself. I love you, Alex, and I'm not going anywhere. He kissed me then, soft and gentle and full of promise. It was nothing like the desperate, possessive kisses we'd shared in our previous life. This was something new, something clean and honest and real. When we broke apart, I was crying. I don't know how to do this, I admitted. I don't know how to have a normal relationship. Neither do I, Mason said, wiping away my tears. But we'll figure it out together. We'll make mistakes, and we'll learn from them. We'll fight and we'll make up. We'll be human, Alex, instead of playing roles. What about your mother? Her medical bills? She's doing better, Mason said. The treatments are working and she's got good insurance now. I don't need your money, Alex. I never really did. I just needed an excuse to be with you. And now I don't need an excuse, he said with a smile. I just need you to say yes. I looked at him, this man who'd died for me, who'd been reborn for me, who was offering me a chance at the kind of love I'd never believed I deserved. There was still fear there, still the terrifying possibility that we'd hurt each other again. But there was also hope, and for the first time in my life I chose hope over fear. Yes, I said. Chapter 6, Outside Pressure. The next few weeks were like a dream. Mason and I fell into a routine that was completely different from our previous life. We spent time together because we wanted to, not because of any arrangement or obligation. We talked about everything: our classes, our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. Mason was working toward a degree in social work, wanting to help kids who were struggling the way he had. I was still figuring out my path, but with Mason's encouragement, I'd started volunteering at a local literacy center. It felt good to use my privilege for something meaningful, to help people without expecting anything in return. "You're different," Mason observed one evening as we walked across campus after my volunteer shift. I don't know, more like yourself." "What do you mean?" "Before, you were always performing," he said. "Always trying to be what you thought I wanted or what you thought you should be. But now you're just Alex, the real Alex." I thought about that. He was right. In our previous life, I'd been so focused on maintaining control, on being the powerful one in the relationship, that I'd lost sight of who I really was. Now, without the money and the manipulation between us, I was free to just be myself. "I like the real Alex," Mason said, squeezing my hand. "Even if he's not as impressive as the rich Alex?" "Especially then," Mason said firmly. "The rich Alex was scary. The real Alex is just mine." The word sent a thrill through me. Mine. Not in the possessive, controlling way I'd once claimed him, but in the way that people belong to each other when they choose to, when they commit to building something together. But of course, nothing good lasts forever without challenges. The first sign of trouble came when I got a call from my mother. I was in my apartment working on an essay when my phone rang. "Alex, darling." My mother's voice was warm but strained. "How are you? We haven't heard from you in weeks." "I'm fine, Mom. Just busy with school." "That's wonderful, dear. Your father and I were hoping you could come home for dinner this weekend. There's something we need to discuss." Something in her tone made my stomach clench. "What kind of something?" "It's better discussed in person," she said. "Please, Alex. It's important." I agreed to come home, though I had a bad feeling about it. My parents had never been particularly involved in my life, content to provide money and expect good grades in return. For them to suddenly want to talk suggested something serious. I told Mason about the call, and he offered to come with me for moral support. But I knew that would only make things worse, whatever things turned out to be. The drive to my parents' house was familiar yet strange. I'd grown up in this wealthy suburb, in a house that was more like a museum than a home. Everything was perfectly maintained, perfectly arranged, perfectly cold. My parents were waiting for me in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the pristine white couch. My father was reading the Wall Street Journal. My mother was sipping tea from China that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "Alex," my mother said, standing to give me a brief hug. "You look well. A little thin, perhaps, but well." "Thanks, Mom." My father folded his newspaper and looked at me over his reading glasses. "Sit down, son. We need to talk." I sat in the chair across from them, feeling like I was about to be called to account for some crime I wasn't aware of committing. "We've been hearing things," my mother said, her voice carefully neutral, "about your social life at school." "What kind of things?" "That you've been seen with a young man," my father said bluntly. "That you've been behaving in ways that are inappropriate." My blood ran cold. "Inappropriate how?" "Alex," my mother said gently, "we know you're young, that you're experimenting, but this phase needs to end. You have responsibilities, expectations to meet." "Phase," I repeated, feeling anger starting to build in my chest. "Your behavior is already causing talk," my father said. "The Hendersons mentioned seeing you at that bar downtown, holding hands with some boy. The Mitchells heard similar stories from their son. So this needs to stop," my father said firmly. "I don't care what you do in private, but publicly you need to present a more appropriate image. You're a Morrison, Alex. You have a reputation to maintain." "And what if I don't want to maintain it?" My parents exchanged a look that I recognized from childhood. It was the look they gave each other when they were discussing whether to give me a particularly expensive toy or privilege. "Then you'll need to make a choice," my mother said softly. Your family and your future, or this infatuation. It's not an infatuation, I said, standing up. I love him. Love, my father scoffed. You're 19 years old. You don't know what love is. I know what it isn't, I shot back. It isn't conditional. It isn't something you take away when someone doesn't live up to your expectations. Alex, my mother said, her voice taking on a warning tone, you need to think about this carefully. Your trust fund, your education, your future. It all depends on making the right choices. Are you threatening me? We're trying to help you, my father said. But if you continue down this path, if you continue to embarrass this family publicly, there will be consequences. I stared at them, these people who'd given me everything except the one thing I'd actually needed, unconditional love. They were willing to cut me off, to destroy my future, because I'd fallen in love with someone they didn't approve of. What if I choose him? I asked. Then you'll do it without our support, my father said. Financial or otherwise. The threat hung in the air between us. I thought about my apartment, my car, my credit cards, all of it funded by my parents' money. Without their support, I'd be just another struggling college student, working part-time jobs and eating ramen noodles. But I also thought about Mason, about the way he looked at me like I was worth something, about the way he'd chosen me despite everything. I thought about the life we were building together, the future we were planning. I need time to think, I said finally. Of course, my mother said, relief evident in her voice. Take all the time you need. But Alex, remember, some choices can't be undone. I left my parents' house feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. They were asking me to choose between my old life and my new one, between security and love, between what was expected and what I wanted. I drove back to my apartment in a daze, my mind racing with possibilities and fears. When I got there, Mason was waiting for me, sitting on my couch with a cup of tea and a concerned expression. How did it go? He asked. I told him everything, watching his face grow more serious with each word. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. So what are you going to do? He asked finally. I don't know, I admitted. I mean, I know what I want to do, but you're scared, he said, understanding immediately. Terrified, I corrected. Mason, I've never had to support myself. I've never had to worry about money or work or any of the things normal people worry about. What if I can't do it? What if I fail? Mason moved closer to me on the couch, taking my hands in his. Then we'll figure it out together, he said. Alex, I've been poor my whole life. I know how to live on nothing, how to make a dollar stretch, how to find free food and cheap entertainment. I can teach you. But what if it's not enough? What if we can't make it work? Then at least we'll have tried, Mason said. At least we'll have been true to ourselves and to each other. And if I choose my family? If I choose the money? Mason's face fell slightly, but his voice remained steady. Then I'll understand. I won't like it, but I'll understand. Money is security, Alex. It's safety. I know how tempting that can be. But you'd leave me. I'd have to, he said softly. Because I can't go back to being bought, Alex. I can't go back to being someone's secret shame. I love you too much to accept less than everything. His words hit me like a physical blow. Mason was giving me a choice, but it was really no choice at all. I could have him completely, or I could lose him forever. I'm scared, I admitted. I know, he said, pulling me into his arms. But Alex, love is always scary. There's always a risk. The question is whether you think I'm worth the risk. I looked at him. This man who'd loved me through death and rebirth, who'd chosen me despite everything, who was offering me a chance at real happiness. There was still fear there, still the terrifying possibility that we'd fail, that we'd end up broke and struggling and miserable. But there was also love and hope and the promise of a future built on something real instead of money and manipulation. You're worth everything, I said, and I meant it. Chapter 7, The Choice. The next few days passed in a blur of anxiety and sleepless nights. I found myself constantly thinking about my parents' ultimatum. weighing the security of my old life against the uncertainty of choosing Mason. Every time I thought I'd made my decision, doubt would creep in. Mason was patient with me, never pushing or pressuring me to choose. He continued to spend time with me, to love me, to show me every day what I'd be giving up if I chose my family's money over him. But he also made it clear that he wouldn't wait forever. "I've told my mother about us," he said one evening as we were walking through campus. "About you, about my feelings, about everything." I stopped walking, my heart racing. "What did she say?" "She was surprised at first," Mason admitted. "She'd suspected I might be gay, but she wasn't sure. When I told her about you, about how much I love you, she was accepting. She said she just wants me to be happy." "And are you happy? I mean," Mason smiled, the kind of genuine smile that made my chest ache with how much I loved him. "Happier than I've ever been." "You?" "Terrified," I said honestly. "But yes, happy. The happiest I've ever been." "Then why are you still hesitating?" I didn't have a good answer for that. The truth was, I was still the same person who'd once been addicted to control, who'd felt safer when I could buy what I wanted instead of earning it. The idea of being financially dependent on my parents' goodwill was terrifying, but the idea of being without their safety net was even more so. "I'm not like you," I said finally. "I don't know how to be strong. I don't know how to live without money." "You're stronger than you think," Mason said firmly. "And you don't have to live without money. You just have to earn it yourself instead of inheriting it." "But what if I can't? What if I'm not capable of supporting myself?" "Then I'll support you," Mason said. "Just like you supported me before, except this time it'll be because I choose to, not because you're paying me to." "That's not fair to you." "Let me decide what's fair to me," Mason said. "Alex, I love you. I want to build a life with you, a real life based on partnership and equality. But I can't do that if you're constantly worried about money, constantly looking over your shoulder at your parents' approval." He was right, I knew he was right, but knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two different things. The decision was made for me 3 days later. I was in my apartment, trying to focus on studying for midterms, when there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find my mother standing there, looking elegant and composed as always. "Hello, Alex," she said. "May I come in?" I stepped aside, letting her into my small apartment. She looked around with barely concealed distaste, taking in the simple furniture and modest accommodations. "This is quite a change from your dorm room," she said. "I like having my own space." "I'm sure you do." She sat down on my couch, crossing her legs at the ankle in that perfectly proper way she taught me as a child. "I wanted to speak with you about our conversation the other day. I'm still thinking about it." "I'm sure you are. But Alex, I want you to understand something. Your father and I, we're not trying to be cruel. We're trying to protect you." "From what?" "From making a mistake that will follow you for the rest of your life," she said. "This boy you're infatuated with, his name is Mason. This Mason," she continued, "he's not right for you. He's not from our world, Alex. He doesn't understand the responsibilities that come with our family name, the expectations that will be placed on you. Maybe I don't want those expectations. You say that now, but you're young. You don't understand what you'd be giving up. The connections, the opportunities, the security, all of it would be gone. I'd have Mason. And what happens when that's not enough?" my mother asked. "What happens when you're struggling to pay rent, when you can't afford the lifestyle you're accustomed to, when you realize that love doesn't pay the bills? Then we'll figure it out. Will you?" she asked. "Or will you resent him for what you've given up? Will you blame him for your struggles?" Her words hit closer to home than I wanted to admit. I'd already been worried about those exact things, had already been questioning whether I was strong enough to choose love over security. "I see I've given you something to think about," my mother said, standing up. "Alex, I love you. Your father loves you. We want what's best for you, even if you can't see it right now. And if I choose Mason, then you'll be choosing to walk away from your family," she said sadly. "And that's not something that can be undone." She left then, leaving me alone with my thoughts and fears. I sat on my couch, staring at the wall, trying to imagine a life without my parents' support. No trust fund, no safety net, no fallback plan. Just me and Mason trying to make it on our own. The thought should have been romantic, should have felt like an adventure. Instead, it felt like jumping off a cliff without knowing if there was water below. I was still sitting there when Mason arrived an hour later. He took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "What happened?" he asked, sitting down beside me. I told him about my mother's visit, about her warnings and ultimatums. Mason listened without comment, his expression growing more serious with each word. "She's not wrong," he said finally. "What?" "About the challenges we'd face," Mason clarified. "About how hard it would be to start over without your family's support. She's not wrong about any of that. So you think I should choose them?" "I think you should choose what you can live with," Mason said. "Because there's no going back once you make this decision. If you choose me, you'll be giving up everything you've ever known. If you choose them, you'll be giving up everything we could be. I don't know how to make that choice." "Yes, you do," Mason said gently. "You've already made it. You're just scared to admit it." I looked at him, this man who'd become the center of my world, who'd shown me what real love looked like. He was right. I had already made my choice. I'd made it the moment I told him I loved him, the moment I'd decided to stop running from what we could be together. "I choose you," I said, and the words felt like a weight lifting off my chest. "I choose us." Mason's face lit up with joy, and he pulled me into his arms. "Are you sure? Because there's no going back, Alex. Once you make this choice, we're in it together for better or worse." "I'm sure," I said, and for the first time in days I felt peace. "I'm scared, but I'm sure." "We'll figure it out," Mason said, kissing my forehead. "We'll get jobs, we'll budget, we'll eat ramen and shop at thrift stores. We'll be broke and happy and completely in love. Promise." "I promise," he said. "I love you, Alex. We're going to be okay." Chapter 8. The Confrontation. The conversation with my parents was even worse than I'd expected. I called them the next morning, asking to meet for lunch so I could tell them about my decision. They agreed, probably hoping I'd chosen to end things with Mason. We met at their country club, a place I'd grown up visiting but had never felt comfortable in. The dining room was full of well-dressed people who looked just like my parents, all money and breeding and carefully maintained appearances. "You look well, dear," my mother said as we sat down at our usual table. "I hope you've had time to think about our conversation." "I have," I said, my heart pounding. "I've made my decision." "And?" my father asked, looking up from his menu. "I choose Mason," I said. "I choose love over money." The silence that followed was deafening. My parents looked at each other, then back at me, their expressions a mixture of disappointment and something that might have been grief. "I see," my mother said finally. "And you're certain about this?" "I'm certain. Even knowing what it will cost you? Even knowing what it will cost me." My father set down his menu and leaned back in his chair. "Then there's nothing more to discuss. You've made your choice, and now you'll have to live with the consequences." "I understand." "Do you?" my mother asked. "Do you really understand what you're giving up? Your education, your future, your family?" "I'm giving up my dependence on you," I corrected. "I'm not giving up my education or my future. I'm just going to have to work for them instead of having them handed to me." "And your family?" my father asked. "That's up to you," I said. "I love you both, but I won't be blackmailed into living a life that isn't mine." "We're not blackmailing you," my mother said. "We're trying to save you from a mistake." "The only mistake I've made is waiting this long to stand up for myself," I said, standing up from the table. "I'm sorry you can't accept the person I am, but I'm not sorry for who I love." I left the restaurant without looking back, feeling both heartbroken and liberated. I'd just severed ties with my family, had just given up everything I'd ever known for the chance to be with Mason. It should have been terrifying, and it was, but it was also right. Mason was waiting for me when I got back to my apartment, sitting on my couch with a cup of tea and a worried expression. "How did it go?" he asked. About as well as expected, I said, sinking down beside him. They're cutting me off. Completely. No more money, no more support, no more family. Are you okay? I think so, I said, and I was surprised to realize I meant it. I'm scared, but I'm okay. I chose you, Mason. I chose us. Are you sure? Because if you change your mind. I'm not changing my mind, I said firmly. I love you. I want to build a life with you, whatever that looks like. Mason smiled, the kind of smile that made my chest ache with how much I loved him. Then we'll figure it out together. Promise. I promise, he said, kissing me softly. I love you, Alex. We're going to be okay. Chapter 9, Jamie's Goodbye. The fallout from my decision was immediate and harsh. By the end of the week, my credit cards had been canceled. My bank account had been frozen, and I'd received a formal letter from my parents' lawyer informing me that I was no longer welcome in their home. I was sitting in my apartment, staring at the eviction notice I just received, when there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Jamie standing there, looking uncomfortable and sad. Hey, he said. I heard what happened. About your parents, news travels fast, I said, stepping aside to let him in. It's a small campus, Jamie said, sitting down on my couch.
Alex, I'm sorry.
I know how much your family meant to you. Did they? I asked, sitting down across from him. Because I'm starting to think they only cared about me as long as I was the son they wanted me to be. That's not true, Jamie said gently. Parents, they just have a hard time seeing past their own expectations sometimes. It doesn't mean they don't love you. Then why does it feel like they do? Jamie was quiet for a moment, studying my face. Because you're hurt, he said finally. Because you're grieving the relationship you thought you had with them. I made the right choice, I said, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed it. I know you did, Jamie said. And I wanted to tell you something. I'm proud of you. Proud of me? For choosing love over security, he said. For being brave enough to risk everything for the person you care about. That takes courage, Alex. Real courage. I don't feel brave, I admitted. I feel terrified. That's what makes it brave, Jamie said with a small smile. If you weren't scared, it wouldn't be a risk. Jamie? I said, feeling a wave of guilt wash over me.
I'm sorry.
For using you, for not being honest about what I was feeling, for making you think you were something more than a distraction. I was never just a distraction, Jamie said firmly. I was your friend. I cared about you and I wanted to help you figure out what you really wanted. And I did, didn't I? I helped you realize that what you really wanted was Mason. You deserve better than that. I deserve honesty, Jamie said. And you gave me that eventually. You told me the truth about your feelings, about Mason, about everything. That's more than a lot of people would have done. What happens now? With us, now we're friends, Jamie said. Real friends, not complicated friends with benefits and financial arrangements. Just friends who care about each other. I'd like that, I said, and I meant it. Good, Jamie said, standing up, because I have a feeling you're going to need all the friends you can get. He was right. Over the next few weeks, I learned just how difficult it was to live without my parents' financial support. I had to find a job, had to learn to budget, had to discover what it meant to worry about money for the first time in my life. But I also learned something else. I learned that I was stronger than I'd thought, that I was capable of more than I'd imagined. With Mason's help, I found work at a tutoring center, using my academic skills to help other students while earning money for rent and food. It wasn't easy. There were days when I missed my old life, when I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. But every time I looked at Mason, every time I saw the way he looked at me with love and pride and respect, I knew I'd made the right choice. I love you, I told him one evening as we shared a simple dinner of pasta and salad in my small apartment. I love you too, he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. And I'm proud of you, for choosing us, for choosing love, for choosing to be brave. I'm proud of us, I said, for making it work, for building something real together. We're going to be okay, Mason said, And for the first time, I really believed him. Chapter 10, New Beginnings. 6 months later, Mason and I were living together in a small apartment near campus. It wasn't much, one bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a living room that barely fit our secondhand furniture. But it was ours. We'd built it together, paid for it together, made it a home together. I was working at the tutoring center and had picked up a part-time job at a bookstore. Mason was still bartending at Murphy's while finishing his degree. We were both working hard, both struggling sometimes, but we were doing it together. "I have news," Mason said one evening, coming home from work with a huge grin on his face. "Good news or bad news?"